crime spree right behind me.
Hey, Strange.
Vice Mayor Strange, you'll address her properly.
You can kiss my foot.
Mr. Rickard, you're out of order.
FBI, we are asking you to investigate this council. Please look into this council, how they award contracts, the bid process, how they use their positions to benefit their friends and themselves, how they use their positions to attack residents and critics and neighbors and business competition. FBI, will you please look into this?
And I welcome the FBI here. If you notice, Mr. Thompson with his plea for the FBI and his watchdog group, this city runs the cleanest in this whole county. I guarantee
He was served a federal subpoena this morning.
Did receive a subpoena this morning, and we're going to cooperate 100% with the subpoena. And
Most of you who were involved up here, you gaslighted me. You tried to say I was crazy. And now we know that that's not true. And there's a lot of other issues I've been asking about as well. So long before I started going to all the city council meetings in Panama City Beach, the Tallahassee truth teller was doing that a couple hundred miles away. Been doing it for more than a decade. And oh my goodness, has it ever led to the biggest stories, the big politicians, undercover FBI stings. You will not believe the stories about the bribes, about the midget strippers. But I don't want to get into that right away. See, Dr. Erwin Jackson went to all of the meetings and said, hey, what about this contract? What about this bribe? What about this kickback? He filed ethics complaints. He became such a pain in their necks. First, they laughed at him, right? Then they just ignored him really at first. Then they laughed at him. Then they called him a gadfly and crazy. They even had him followed. And it turns out what he was saying was true. And he rattled the bushes enough that there was an undercover FBI sting probably about 2 years before ours in Bay County that nobody knew about. And it led to a big politician by the name of Scott Maddox, a former mayor and county commissioner, city commissioner in Tallahassee, the youngest mayor ever elected in Tallahassee. Big story. But then he was arrested and charged with 44 counts. And now he's in something like day 10 of his trial. And his arrogant pomposity is gone. And I want to bring on the man who caused all of that. And it is Dr. Erwin Jackson. Dr. Jackson, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I appreciate being here. And appreciate all the work that you've done over in the Panama City area as well.
You're doing such great stuff. I cannot wait to show people what kind of stuff you've done. I can't wait to hear the stories. And have you been actually going to the trials and sitting in them?
Well, no, what happened is I was called as a defense witness. Now, that's amazing. How could I be a defense witness? But their attorney asked me to be a defense witness. What I've learned is once they call you as a defense witness, the first day I went there, and then the judge had the bailiff escort me out of the courtroom.
That's right.
Because of if I hear the secrets they have. Well, I already know there's secrets, and no one's going to change my mind. But I think the reason for this is not to have me speak, but to make sure that I can't be in the courtroom, on the land. I can't be providing my commentary every 2 hours when they take a break. So they've got me locked out of this system.
That's exactly right. Because in a federal trial, and I was in one last August, First Amendment retaliation against Panama City Beach. And like you said, the witnesses can't come back in. No cameras, no TV crews. That's why they have those sketches. And but you can come in, the public can come in and watch it. And more people ought to do that, don't you think?
Absolutely. I have 3 or 4 people that are showing up on a daily basis taking notes and sending that information to me. So I'm monitoring it. I'm still spending 6 hours a day reviewing the information and commenting on it on my Facebook page.
When I tell people that you are the godfather of this, of going and I can't wait to ask you what got you started more than a decade ago, but let's take a look at you in action, the kind of questions that you would ask.
McKibben Hotel Group project is the most recent example of blatant dishonesty, unethical conduct, manipulation of this commission for the sole purpose of providing financial benefit to Scott Maddox, Governance Incorporated, and his business partners, Gary Jordan, and others. When will this commission have the courage to stand up for the public and demand ethical actions from its members? Scott Maddox has used his lobbying firm Governance to facilitate this sale to the McKibben Hotel Group, which began back in May of 2006. Since becoming a city commissioner, he has tried to hide his role from the public. First, City Attorney Shelley suggested Scott should not vote on these issues. Unfortunately, Shelley suggested it'd be a neat trick if Scott would simply get up and leave, as he has done for numerous months, leave the dais before any vote. This legal advice would allow Scott to not vote, but also prevent him from disclosing his conflict of interest in writing.
Wow, that's pretty specific. And before you tell us more about it, let's hear what Scott Maddox, who was a commissioner, said right after that.
Next speaker is Curtis Baines.
Mr. Mayor, just briefly before you go on to the next speaker, although we all know that this stuff isn't true, I always try to dispel it because someone might be unsuspectingly watching TV. Of course, what Mr. Jackson says is not true, and everyone in this room knows it, and everyone that follows closely. He's accused me of everything from having my cousin being the fire chief, who I wasn't related to running a criminal empire, to somehow stealing $300 million. And so far, my wife wants to know where the $300 million is. It hasn't surfaced, but I just want to, for the record, say that absolutely what Mr. Jackson is saying is not true, but then again, it's not a surprise to any of us. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Were you lying then? Are you lying now? Or are you not, in fact, a chronic and habitual liar?
Yeah, that's what he is, isn't it, Erwin? So tell us about this. When was that exactly?
That presentation, here was the amazing thing. First, that presentation, I never thought when I made it, it would be played twice in the J.T. Burnett trial that's currently ongoing.
And he's the big businessman that made the deals, right? J.T. Burnett's also in trial?
Well, keep in mind one little correction. Scott Maddox, the ex-mayor, he's already pleaded guilty. They had 44 criminal charges. He agreed to admit to 3 or 4, and the maximum penalty for those violations would be 35 or 40 years in prison. So that's where he was. His girlfriend, business partner, Paige Carter Smith, also agreed that these were criminal charges. She participated. She's facing the same charges. They have not given them a sentence yet because they both agreed to testify against the business partner who put up the bribe, and that was J.T. Burnett. So J.T. Burnett's trial is ongoing now, and these other folks who've already admitted their guilt, and also there was a man, a past county commissioner by the name of Gary Jordan, who also admitted that he participated in these felony charges. And it was very nice for me to hear after several years. That tape was probably 2012 or 13, so it may be 6-7 years ago, and it's being used in a federal trial, played by the defense first, and then paid in total by the prosecution. So it's great to have these folks agreeing that what, in fact, I said was truthful.
It's amazing. And what is happening in Bay County is so similar to what happened in Tallahassee and what's happening, I'm sure, all across these United States. And that is you get very powerful, wealthy local businessmen paying and colluding with very powerful politicians who they fund. And it needs to stop. And the only way it can stop is if more people go to the meetings and confront them the way you did. But I think this will probably be a perfect time to thank one of my sponsors.
Have you received a speeding ticket for which you want no points placed on your driving record? I'm El Saline, 850-215-0628. Let me help you.
So this was the picture, Erwin, the day the newspaper came out. So the same guy who just said that you were lying about him, you weren't lying about him. And that had to feel pretty good to see on the front page of the paper.
It certainly does, because the sad point of all this is I had a business leader ask me today, are we almost through this? Are we almost through the corruption? And I said, no. If you're talking about the trials, I think we're halfway through. I think we got a series of more trials to go through. If you're talking about, are we through with the corruption? The answer is absolutely not. We'll never be through with the corruption when businesses, civic leaders will not stand up. They simply look the other way and tolerate and participate in the corruption. We'll change a few players, but the corruption will continue until the public changes.
That is such a great point. And it's always been, one of the most frustrating things to me is to watch the other members of the council or the commission circle the wagons and not say anything. H.L. Mencken was you probably know, a very sardonic and caustic columnist in the 30s and such. And he talked about a story about a lynching of a man. And he said that everybody in the town, Erwin, knew that this was wrong, that it was a lie. And he said, if only one bigwig, if only one had stood up and said something, it could have sparked a conversation, but nobody did. Nobody said a word. And it is incredible how they can all lie with no compunction up there, isn't it?
Right. It was. And just like today, Mr. Burnett made a comment under oath, and he said, well, there was two city commissioners, Nancy Miller and Gil Ziffer, and those two individuals, he said, when again in the past, he said those were the two city commissioners you couldn't bribe. And I thought, well, that's good to hear. But then he immediately turned around and said, but all you had to do to get their support was just to personally fund one of their stupid ideas. And so the point being, or one of their stupid pet projects. So the point being, it is a bribe. Some just cost you more. Some people would take a smaller bribe.
And we're talking big, big bribes, right? Like this guy here. There's Scott Maddox, the one that we showed where you confronted him. He thought he was doing a project, but it turned out it was an undercover FBI agent posing as a businessman. They even flew him out to Vegas. Tell us a little bit about what you know. Can you imagine being a big, powerful guy like Maddox saying, I want, and I'll let you say the number, I want this much per month for life, and we'll give you the project. Let's fly to Vegas and have some fun.
Right. Well, they had him on tape saying that he wanted $20,000 a month
for life, I think.
Bad. And then he also, on the one project where they were talking about the McKibben Hotel Group, the video you showed was showing that also, he wanted $100,000, but he wanted, if you voted against the project, you would get $100,000. He also had a friend, Gary Jordan, lobbying that was working with him, supporting the other side, the pro-developer and the anti-developer. Well, he turned around and wanted to charge one guy $100,000, the other side $50,000. Now, how are you going to vote for and against? But he collected the $150,000. Yeah. He got there, and on that date, he stood up and he left, so he didn't have to vote at all, and he collected all the money.
Yeah, you know, that's
It's blatant. It was just
you
blatant.
talk about racketeering. It is. It's brazen. I used to go to the well, you saw. I said there's racketeering going on in here, and I even got sued for defamation by 2 different public figures because I said that. So guess what I did, or when I said it more, and I deposed one of them on video. Who do you think dropped both of those cases? Me or them?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
I was telling the truth. Now, so here's what they did to you. They tried to shut you up, and this is who we're talking about. There's Scott Maddox, the politician. Look at these headlines. They tried to shut you up. Talk to us a little bit about when they started taking you seriously, because you started going to all the meetings. Nobody thinks somebody's going to do that, but you did.
Well, they didn't think someone would spend 10 or 11 years. But see, I've got a philosophy. If I never quit, I won't lose. I knew that. And I was willing to spend the necessary time and personal finances to hire staff to help investigate this, hire attorneys to investigate this. And when they went ahead and they hired a private ex-police officer as a private investigator and then spy on my business, my family, my employees, then I knew it was going to be a blood sport. From that point on, you mess with a family, then it doesn't matter. So I'm just thankful that it stopped. I was told by 2 police officers who are friends of mine, for them, the city had caused me a problem. They were going to plant pot plants in different properties I own, and then have the police find these pot plants and harass me, and just to kind of get back at me and give me something else to talk about. So I immediately then, the police wouldn't help me, the sheriff wouldn't help me. I went to the FBI, and the FBI was extremely supportive, and they did a thorough job of investigating me first to understand why I'm spending this much time. And after that, I worked as an unofficial, unpaid informant for the FBI for several years. So when it was funny when you heard Scott Maddox up there, and I would say, well, Scott said, Jackson keeps saying the FBI is going to come in here and arrest all these people. They're going to arrest us, and we're not doing anything wrong. Well, when I did that, lo and behold, I talked with the FBI. The FBI was monitoring every 3-minute presentation, and frequently the FBI would call me up and they would say, you know, they would never tell me what to say, but they'd say, you know, it would be interesting if someone would ask Scott Maddox XYZ. Well, they started asking me some big questions. I said, well, wait, let me get an ink pen so I can write these questions down. So, and then the one time when I got up there and I said, okay, I'm going to go ahead and bribe the commissioners. So I had an FBI t-shirt on. I took $5,000 of real money. My wife wanted me to take Monopoly money. And I said, no, you can't take a Monopoly. So I got 5,000, $100 bills, walked up there and gave each commissioner, I said, I quit. I'm through with trying to get anything done. I'm going to join the crowd. And I handed each of the commissioners $1,000 apiece. Well, they went ahead, and as soon as Scott got it, I knew he'd throw it on upset and throw it on the floor. I walked back to the microphone and I said, yep, that's the very first time I've ever seen Scott Maddox refuse a bribe.
Well, one thing I've learned about this, because I've been doing it for about 6 years, Erwin, as you know, is a lot of these guys, they can handle being criticized. But one thing they cannot handle is being laughed at and lampooned. And so when the newspaper wrote a column trying to obfuscate and confuse people about you settled the matter in the funniest way. You don't even know I have this, but this is hilarious, especially your very first words.
Howdy. I'm Dr. Erwin Jackson. I'm at 1341 Jackson Bluff, and I'm here to help you tonight. In a recent editorial, Bob Gabordi expressed concern that the public might be getting confused over my role in exposing the unethical and self-serving actions of John Marks in the past. Self-serving actions of John Marks. In the past, the good guys always wore white hats. I'm wearing this hat tonight simply to help eliminate some of the confusion. In the end, Bob's conclusions were accurate,
Yeah.
Sometimes you just got to make it easy for them, Erwin.
You have to make it easy, and I got a lot of static from that. But I thought the white hat, we got good guys and bad guys, and there was so much negative commentary coming towards me. And Bob Gabordi, he was the executive editor of the newspaper, the Tallahassee Democrat. He told me he was very much opposed to my activities. He said, Jackson, you're just jealous of the business success that Scott Maddox has. And I told him, no, you're a crook, that Maddox is. And so I bet him. I said, okay. I said, here's the deal. The day that Scott Maddox is found guilty, I want you to publish on the front page of the newspaper, Dr. Jackson was right. That's all I want. And
Well,
guess
you almost got that. Instead, you had to settle for that.
Absolutely. That's not bad. And I'll tell you one other thing. I have a wall in my office next door, and I have posters I'll make of the best, something like you've just shown there.
I know you do. There's one right there.
There's one right there. But I'm going to have some new posters, and I want the picture, the head of each of these politicians who go to prison. And I'm going to have a wall of shame in my office, and then I'll have the number of years in prison they each get.
You know, I got to say, at least the guys, the commission in Tallahassee, and I know they got a little heated, but it was, and I'm going to show just about 30 seconds of this for those who haven't seen it yet, just the first 30 seconds of my intro. It was so bad. I actually looked at the camera of the city and I asked the FBI to come, and they laughed at it. And then guess what happened about 2 years later? Every single one of them had to comply with a sweeping federal subpoena. And they did show up. In August of last year, all of them had to comply. So we're about 2 years behind you. Yeah. Watch this 30 seconds.
I'm here at the scene of the crime spree, right behind me.
Vice Mayor Strange, you'll address her properly. You can kiss my foot. Mr. Rickard, you're out of order.
FBI, we are asking you to investigate this council. Please look into this council, how they award contracts, the bid process, how they use their positions to benefit their friends and themselves, how they use their positions to attack residents and critics and neighbors and business competition. FBI, will you please look into this?
And I welcome the FBI here. If you notice, Mr. Thompson, with his plea for the FBI and his watchdog group, this city runs the cleanest in this whole county. I guarantee
he was served a federal subpoena this morning.
We did receive a subpoena this morning, and we're going to cooperate 100% with the subpoena.
And most of you who were involved up here, you gaslighted me. You tried to say I was crazy. And now we know that that's not true.
Yeah, the truth seems to come out when the FBI is looking hard, doesn't it, Erwin?
It does. And I'll give you one cautionary thing in your process over there. Several years ago, I first started with John Marks, Sean Pittman, and money was flowing through.
Andrew Gillum.
And they went to the FBI. The FBI was able to get bank records that proved where the money came from and where it went. I'm being told by the FBI, we've got it, Mr. Jackson, don't worry about it. And they put this package together and gave it to the U.S. prosecutor. Unfortunately, after 2 or 3 or 4 weeks, this FBI calls me back and says, Erwin, I want you to understand, we gather the information. We don't decide who's going to be prosecuted. And the U.S. prosecutor, Pamela Marsh, according to the FBI, made a statement that she was not going to indict her law partner, John Marks. And that was when the FBI, after 2 years, yeah, that's the guy right there, he should have been indicted. His law partner was Pamela Marsh and also Alan Katz. And Alan Katz was a city commissioner. And I'd filed an ethics complaint with him as well for the biomass plant that started years ago. And he was hired by the biomass plant to handle their bonding issues. And he was voting for them, surprisingly. So even you can have the FBI on your side, the FBI can have the documentation, but if you don't have an honest U.S. attorney, nothing happens. And that
Well,
was
we did for a while there. We had U.S. Attorney Larry Keefe.
absolutely.
And with the new president, now we have a different one, and that has me a little concerned. How about you?
And we don't have one. We haven't had a new one, hasn't been designated, I don't think. But
I know that the sitting U.S. attorney, his name is Jason Cootie, and I can tell you that he is fantastic. Jason Cootie is fantastic. As long as we have Jason Cootie as the sitting U.S. attorney, things will be all right. But I know they've got somebody in mind now that they just mentioned. I think he has to go through some sort of confirmation process.
Correct.
That's got me worried.
We'll see. Another important thing I'll throw out in the trial, it came out. I've been posting, asking the questions. Where is Adam Corey? He was an individual, good friends. There he is with the FBI agent. But in the last couple of years, since these indictments, he's been nowhere to be found. It was mentioned by one of the FBI agents yesterday or day before that the reason you haven't seen him is Adam Corey is involved in another branch of this investigation. And they insinuated that would be with, and you think of Adam Corey, he's extremely, extremely close to Andrew Gillum, our past mayor. So we're going to be hearing more about that. And because he wore a wire for 6 or 8 months for the FBI. So Adam Corey has a lot to tell.
So now we're in the situation where we've got the Biden administration who removed the U.S. attorney in the Northern District of Florida who was concerned with public corruption. Right. This new president says he's more concerned about us, you and me, old white guys, So, and that's a little scary because Andrew Gillum may have just gotten his protection through the presidency and through the U.S. attorney. I hope not, if he in fact did what we think he did and what I think he did.
Right. I think so. And I just hope that the U.S. attorneys would be willing, if a private citizen like I will stand up, a U.S. attorney would stand up and prosecute those that need to be prosecuted.
Yeah, I like to say, Erwin, especially right now, that it's a hot time in Florida. And I've actually, because I have a clip of Elvis saying it. And I went up there and after a bunch of them had been put under oath, I started off with that. But it's also the way I start off with another one of my sponsors.
It's a hot time in Florida, and my friend Ryan could make sure your air conditioning is running at peak efficiency. He could even install a new one, built to a higher standard, American standard. Find out more at pcairrepair.com.
Erwin, I want to ask you to talk a little bit about it because it's hard to believe unless you see it up close and personal. And you have to be a little different to be able to endure this. I mean, when I go to these meetings, people think I love it. I don't love it, Erwin. I don't. I feel like a long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs, but damn it, I can't live in a world where this happens. And not only are they robbing us blind, but when they're bullies on top of that, that's when I can't take it. And the arrogance is unbelievable. Here's something. So imagine Scott Maddox, right? He thinks he's talking to some big businessman. He demands $20,000 a month in order for them to get the contract. They fly to Vegas and there he is, right? But a bunch of those guys have their faces blurred out because they're either FBI agents undercover or midget strippers. So, I mean, think about how arrogant they are. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, first of all, in that picture, the top picture on the left, that's J.T. Burnett. And he's the one that's under trial right now. And so you had Scott and J.T. Burnett and Adam Corey went out there. And Adam Corey, we were in this hotel room, and Scott always had a fantasy about a mini stripper. And so that was a prize. That's how they celebrated. Scott did with the FBI agents after they had worked out a financial scheme, kickback, bribery, whatever. So that's the story on what happened in Vegas. The other thing, as far as doing this, I hated it. Once I got up and I talked at a city commission meeting, I would go home, take a long hot shower. I felt filthy. I felt like I'd been wrestling, the whole thing was disgusting. But then I had to go back next week because if I quit, No one else was supporting me. Very, very. You won't get a video where I think on one time when they actually sent the private investigator taking pictures, my wife showed up, and that night we had a couple other people in the community. But for the most part, Steve Stewart has been very helpful. He started a program doing reporting, etc. He was very helpful, and it was just extremely tiresome, very lonely. But it just depends. You're either going to have to make a decision to look the other way and give in to them, or you're going to go ahead and you're going to fight it. And then once I started the fight, and once they said they were going to put pot plants over here, and once they started videoing my family and my employees, then there was just no stopping from that point. And I want to make sure that these folks go to jail. There's several other people that still need to be going to jail. We had Rick Fernandez, our city manager. He's gone, came out a couple of days ago, but the city manager asked the mayor, Scott Maddox, or he may have been the city commissioner then, but asked him for a burner phone. Okay, now who asked for a burner phone? And that's a dang clue. And then Scott, when he was caught taking bribes, that being the city manager, guess who said, oh, well, let's just pay him, $20,000 a month. And it worked out to be maybe $150,000, let him go away. So Scott protected. You helped out Scott, then Scott turned around and helped protect you. So we've got quite a few people exited. When the FBI came in the front door, we had 2 commissioners go out the back. The city attorney left. So we're making some progress, but the attitude of our citizens has to change and say no more.
Have you noticed that your credibility has gone up? Because when people didn't know who you were, they probably thought that you just, loved the limelight. But it strikes me, Erwin, and we know each other just a little bit, but not well, but just looking at what you've done, there are, most of the time that I do this over the last 6 years, I felt puny as hell. All right. And people said, Bernie, you're not going to make a difference. And you know what my answer was? Even if I can't win, it doesn't absolve me from doing all I can. And if other people linked arms and made the ground under City Hall rumble, they wouldn't do it. The extent to which there's public corruption in our local governments is the extent to which the people don't show up. The people are scared because they threaten them with jobs, and the extent to which the local press has become public-private partners with them.
Correct. That's exactly it. And the Tallahassee Democrat, with Gabordi there in the past, he would go out walking with events with Scott Maddox, and he enjoyed going to the parties with politicians, and he liked to be on the boards with them, and he just was having a wonderful time. And I was never going out for walks and being on boards, and I'm too busy working, so I just speak the truth and ask them to do right, and then if not, I try to hit them with a hammer, but pleasantly and verbally.
Right. Yep. Now I understand. Gosh, I have so many things I want to ask you. I just forgot one, but I will tell you that Scott Maddox, he had a reason that he didn't remember demanding $20,000 a month.
Right.
And tell everybody what his reason is. Let everybody know what he said, why he can't remember.
Oh, yeah. Well, his comment said, I don't think I lied. And then he said, well, I was so drunk, I don't really remember. Now, here's what's so important about what happened with Scott Maddox the other day. He has an agreement with the U.S. attorney. If you tell the truth and help us prosecute people, we'll cut your years. Now, he decided for some unknown reason, I can speculate, that he got on the stand yesterday and he lied. He said nothing negative. He contradicted his other 2 criminal partners. And he's saying, no, there's no problem with J.T. Burnett, that, the money was not a bribe. It was money given to his girlfriend, Paige Carter. So he went back and repeated the same lies that he said 6, 8, 10 years ago. I believe that he's completely destroyed any agreement he had with the U.S. attorney,
By lying under oath.
which I think is fabulous because it's a clear. I think he ought to at least get 10 years. I've told people I've spent 10, 11 years hard time doing this. He should at least get 10 or 11 years. But now he lied under oath. I think he ought to do 20. And then 20 would be fine. He's 55. He'll get out when he's 75 if he doesn't die in prison.
Yeah. And, it's really a shocking thing that there would be all of this corruption. And after, you'll remember, Erwin, after Scott Maddox was arrested and arraigned, and he went from having that pompous attitude with you to walking in an orange jumpsuit and shackles. And damn, if you didn't show up to the arraignment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm looking forward. I don't know. It'll be the next couple of weeks, I assume, maybe 2 or 3 weeks. I'm looking for the sentencing, and I'm certainly going to be there at the sentencing. And I told him I would stick with him until the end. And I'll say our goodbyes at that day.
Yeah. Just like the famous scene in Casablanca, right? Where the crooked cop was shocked to find gambling going on in here. Here's your winnings, Rick. So all of his colleagues up there, Marks, crooked, he's the worst. All these guys up there, they said they couldn't believe this was going on right under our very noses, especially, Erwin, when the city of Tallahassee has this value system. Look at this. Under values, honor public trust through ethical behavior. I mean, they've got high standards, Erwin. How did this slip through the cracks?
There you go. And it's also kind of high bar. I'm up there telling them every week where the crime is, where the dirty contracts are, ADE, Honeywell. I went through 10 or 15, the $300 million, that clip you paid about Scott Maddox. He worked for Veterans of America. He gave them legal counsel on how to steal $300 million from the veterans, and 30 or 40 of the members of that organization went to prison. Scott didn't. He skated. So he's been lying and skating most of his entire life, and hopefully that'll stop real soon.
Tell us about this guy. If I've got the story right over there in Tallahassee, you've got it's just like here. I'm telling you, it's just like here. You got the big businessman or two or three. You've got a bunch of the politicians on the city side and on the county side. And I believe you said Maddox was working with this guy. He was chairman of the county commission, I believe.
Yes. Yeah.
Gary Jordan.
Yeah, Gary Jordan left being the chairman of the county commission. He started working with Scott Maddox and Scott's girlfriend. Gary, he was first came to light here when he stole, I think it was, 20, 30 years ago. But he went into a local store, Gaffer's, I think. They're out of business now. And he stole 20, 30 watches. He had a child in a baby carriage, and he was hiding them under the blankets where his child was. So that's kind of the first time I heard about him. Then after that, a few years go by, he becomes the chairman of the county commission, which is disheartening. And then he leaves there. He starts working with Scott Maddox, and they've been fleecing both the city government and the county government for years and years, and he has not pleaded guilty, but he agreed with everything that I said he and Scott have done, and he set up his own front organization. He was acting on Scott's behalf. He collected the money for Scott, and then he gave the money to the girlfriend to put it in governance, and then Scott says, I don't own governance, but these two individuals said, oh yeah, he owns governance. He's always controlled it. Yeah. And he controls the money. So
they've gotten more intricate, Erwin. They now have, I call them turtle development councils because they seem more obsessed with the turtles. The TDC, the Tourist Development Council, I always get it wrong. That is just a slush fund. They've got all these slush funds, all these kickbacks. Right. They have citizen boards. I mean, they think if they get enough barriers between each other, that they'll get away with it. But I think these financial schemes the FBI is pretty familiar with. Here's something I've learned, Erwin, and I'd love for you to talk on this. I mentioned it just a bit earlier. Again, some of these guys, they can handle the criticism, but they cannot handle the lampooning them. I'm not going to say disrespectful because we're not that way with them up there, but we do call them out, right? And one of them is pretty ticked off. You're not respectful enough. Gil Ziffer.
I don't know what your relationship is, but when Commissioner Maddox is up here, he's Commissioner Maddox. This is Commissioner Gillum. I'm Commissioner Ziffer. This is Commissioner Miller, and that's Mayor Marks. And that's who we are. And I would appreciate it if you would refer to us when we're up here in that fashion, because I think it's appropriate. I think we've earned that right. And it would, I think, serve your purposes for whatever you're trying to do, to appear to be at least cordial and respectful to us. That doesn't require
That doesn't require a response, Irvin. These guys right here deserve your respect, damn it.
There you go. There you go. What's funny about that clip is that was Gil Ziffer, and they were so upset to try to minimize any, to tear down me and my personality and any positive aspect of my life. So I would fill in my paperwork and I would put in there Dr. Erwin Jackson, because I have a PhD in psychology. Well, then they would introduce me as Dr. Erwin Jackson. And then we did that for a while. But after he made that comment, or 2 weeks before that, an ordinance was passed. And they said on a city commission, we're not going to refer to anyone's title. So if you're a lieutenant colonel, or if you're the president of the university, if you're this, that. So then it's kind of, oh, okay, we're not going to do, it's just Erwin Jackson, whatever. Well, it was funny. So then I started introducing myself as Dr. Erwin Jackson. And I did get up and I rebutted the commissioner. And I said, I don't call you mayor. I don't call you a city commissioner, because your new policy is we don't recognize any titles. So I'm just following your orders. And that's, he didn't like that, but he has no backbone. I talked with him at length about this. And as JT Burnett said at trial, he was easy to bribe. You know, he didn't require money, but if you just go ahead and throw him a few bucks for his pet project, you could get him to do anything.
It's incredible. I want to, before I want to end by showing you in action one more time, and an incredible clip of Maddox denying it. I mean, it's almost verbatim what I hear. I mean, the way they deny it, oh my God, their body language, the way they have certain inflections at the end of their words. You know, I can tell, like you said, when you see them long enough, you can tell. But here's my question. When you go to bed at night and this burns in your soul like it does mine, and when you get up in the morning and it does it again all day long, gnawing at us, are you more disappointed? Are you more pissed that the rest of those guys up there and the city manager and the attorneys all circle the wagons knowing that there's abject corruption? Or are you more mad at the one or two who are doing it the most? Because I'm more upset with everybody else, all the other bigwigs who don't say a word. That's what bothers me the most.
Right. I agree with that. See, to me, you're guilty if you knew what was going on, and they did. And I was sitting there for 10 years telling them what was going on. And the number of commissioners and the sheriff and people in power that stood up and said, well, let's at least look at what Dr. Jackson's saying. The number was small, 0. After 10 years, 0 leaders in our community were willing to stand up and say a damn thing. That is infuriating me. And if the public doesn't change, if we don't get better at electing honest politicians and honest people, and as our sheriffs and the head of the Chamber of Commerce, and encourage bankers to and all business owners to get involved, and just say we won't tolerate it. And that's the message I'm sending to this community. But the rest of the time, the last 2 years, I bought an RV park over in Mariana, and we call it Merritt's Mill Pond. And I've been over there for 2 years. It has a little restaurant. I've been outside working, feeling great, digging ditches, put it in RV sites, on occasions go fishing. The last 2 years has been wonderful. I've gotten fired up about this just because of trials, but I can switch back to my other side real fast.
Yeah, I think another important component of this that we've never talked about is we find ourselves in this position, I believe, also because Americans largely have forgotten what is the role of government. When I hear even a local government talking about a 10-year plan or a 20-year economic development plan, Erwin, when we were younger, we used to hear about this kind of economic planning from the Soviet Union. It was those countries that did that. The rest of us understood that spontaneous order and the invisible hand and private capital was much more effective. And because we're going to be better when dollars are earned rather than awarded, because political dollars aren't as good as productive dollars. And until we get back to realizing what is the proper role of government, we're going to continue to be in this position, I think. I mean, we just even Stalin, for God's sake, limited his economic plans to 3 years.
Yeah. Well, and we got a whole generation that I grew up real poor on a farm in Illinois. And we always worked 7 days a week. I'm sitting here tonight and whatever time it is, but, usually I'm home by 8 at night. It'll be a little bit later tonight, but the idea of not working 7 days a week is very foreign to me. My wife asked, why am I still working? Well, I still have things I want to accomplish. And, this cleaning up Tallahassee a little bit is certainly one of those things. And cleaning up through construction, different neighborhoods, and making something special over at Florida Caverns RV Park is something different too.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to show everybody one more little clip of yours, but I'm really setting up Scott Maddox, the former mayor and commissioner who was arrested on 44 counts and is now, he's confessed to his crimes. The way he denied it and lied is exactly what they do here. I mean, almost verbatim. So here you are first.
Mr. Mayor, you talked about individuals who are misrepresenting the truth, and that's exactly what I want to talk about tonight. For several years, Scott Maddox has been paid well to represent the McKibben Hotel Group. It doesn't matter to me if this money is paid to him directly, funneled to him through a law firm, funneled through his lobbying firm, governance, his business partner, Gary Jordan. The practice is wrong and needs to stop. 2 weeks ago, I came up here and I exposed the financial relationship between Scott and McKibben Hotel Group. We all listened to Scott's indignation that my facts were simply wrong, I was lying, and his claim that I was attacking his, quote, good character. Unbelievably, within 15 minutes, Scott admitted that he has a conflict of interest, as I described, with MHG, and has promised to recuse himself on all future votes in this area. Now, every word that I said was clearly verified by Scott Maddox's own admission. Now, that's nice, Scott, and the public appreciates your willingness to finally admit that you have a financial relationship with MHG. The public also wants to know why it took a private citizen publicly embarrassing you regarding your self-serving actions before you decided to simply admit the truth. Actually, the opportunities for city commissioners to reward themselves are numerous, and the ethics policy now under discussion will do nothing to stop it. For example, city commissioners can hire city contractors to do work for them. City contractors can hire city commissioners. This is a problem. The public must come forth and demand that the ethics policy prevent elected officials from benefiting from city contracts, prevent them from working for city contractors, and prevent them from directing city contracts to their past employers, like, quote, governance, or other business interests. Scott likes to say that he's transferred ownership to governance to his business partner of 10, 15 years, Gary Jordan. I'm equally certain that he can retain an option to buy this business back for $1. It seems the scam is simple. Go ahead and direct money to governance while you're an elected official and then regain control after his time as commissioner is terminated. We need to eliminate that possibility. Our community needs this commission to show real leadership and clearly state that these self-serving actions must cease. And we can do that through the ethics policy. And it's going to take Commissioners Gillum, Miller, and Ziffer for this to be accomplished. I do not expect any support on ethics issues from the mayor or Mr.
Excuse me, your time's expired.
Thank you very much.
So this guy right here was right. Erwin Jackson was right. Later on, the man he was talking about was arrested on 44 counts. And listen to him lie. Watch the way in which he lies and tell me if it looks like anybody you know around here.
Commissioner Maddox, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just briefly, just for the public at home that is watching this, if you watch more than one meeting, you know that Mr. Jackson just comes up every meeting. That what the city attorney addressed wasn't the only thing false he said in his comments. He now makes things up and attributes them to me, that I've said things what I haven't said, that he purports to know about agreements that I have that I don't have. And he knows it's gone beyond the fact of conjecture. He states things as if they were fact when he knows them not to be. So, we're just going to have to expect this. It's unfortunate that that's what public services come to. But for those that watch at home, if you have any questions, you'd be glad to call me. But unfortunately, he's just going to lie every meeting. It doesn't seem to bother him. So we'll just move on.
If you've got a honey-do list or you need some work done around the home or office, call Paul, PCB. He's licensed, insured, and he's a friend of mine.
Dr. Jackson, I just want to thank you so much for what you do and for setting the example and for being the Tallahassee truth teller. I look up to you. I respect you so much. And I knew this was going to be a special night.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I appreciate your support over the years. When you're getting your head kicked in by the city commission, it's kind of nice to look over in Panama City and see the same thing happening to you. So thanks, everyone.
We can commiserate together, I suppose. I'll have to come out and visit you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Erwin Jackson. All right. Geez, what a fun night. I got to do more of these, don't I? These are the kind of shows I need to do more of. If you are not familiar with me, I'm also live on YouTube, but I haven't really been serious about YouTube, but I'm trying to get serious. So you'd make me really happy if you subscribe to the channel. And it's always good to watch there. The video seems to be a little bit better after the fact. The words match the mouth better on YouTube, it seems. And if you'd like to support my efforts, I am not a man of means, by the way, as Dr. Jackson is. So I was fired from the radio station back in 2014 for doing the same thing I'm doing now after being on for 8.5 years. And now I've decided that I'm going to show news outlets that you don't have to hide what's going on to be successful. So if you would like to support my efforts, that's one way you can do it right there by becoming a patron. It's easy. You can quit at any time. It's like a monthly tip in the tip jar, and it's anonymous, which is always helpful because these people are ruthless. Thank you so much for being with me, and I will see you back here really soon. I don't know if it'll be tomorrow or not, but it might be. But I promise to bring you something good. Thank you.